welcome news right now for a lot of people as Canadian Airlines have resumed flights to and from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. So Mexican officials say the violence that erupted after the killing of a cartel kingpin has now settled. And while many say that they are really happy to be coming home, as we speak, other people actually boarding flights to head down into Mexico to go on vacation. And it got us thinking, there's a lot of global unrest there, other parts of the world. Has this changed the way that you travel? A lot. For you too, B?
Yeah. No, it's totally changed the way that I travel. There are places that I don't feel safe traveling to. And, you know, if you have the privilege to travel, it's still very expensive. And there's always going to be risk with that. But when you see the risk right in your face, on your phone, on the news day to day. But the thing that is really interesting to me with the conversations around unrest and natural disasters and things that happen in the places that we travel to is the amount of privilege that comes out when we don't realize that these are places that people live. They're not just escapes for us to vacation to. So some of the conversations I've been seeing, particularly around Mexico, are people saying, oh, you know, I have a trip planned in April. Is the unrest gonna be done by then so I can still come? And I've seen it through Hurricane Melissa, saw it through COVID, saw it through so many different times that we really need to understand that these places are places that people live. These people who work in these resorts are not avatars that are just, you know, they have lives. So we need to consider that.
And you know what? I'm so glad you said that because I was just in Puerto Vallarta in December. Love Puerto Vallarta. I will be back. I'm just gonna let the dust settle. But I'm with you. I was really upset to hear these Canadians who were there who are like, you know what? Air Canada and WestJet and Flair, they need to send a flight right now and pick me up. And it's like, listen, there's been an advisory that everybody needs to stay in place. And the locals who need to get you to that airport, they're staying in place. And it's not worth the $50 Uber ride to get you to the airport so you can go home. Because in order for you to go home, every single local person, the person who handles your bags, the person at the ticket desk, they all have to put their lives at risk so you can go home. Just sit down in the hotel until they tell you otherwise, and then you can go home. Like, have that kind of decency. So it was frustrating to hear that. Very frustrating.
Have you changed when you travel?
I mean, I won't go to the U.S. until there's a different administration in charge, but that's for sure. Doing it. Nope. I will say, though, that in the past, like I remember that in the early 2000s, I went to Egypt, and there were a lot of people saying at that time, because there had been a big terrorist attack in the late 90s, and they were like, why are you going? I was traveling with a group of women. People were very alarmist, and I didn't feel like, I thought it was overblown. And indeed, I think we all have to remember a little piece of it, not with what happened in Mexico, but I think sometimes, like if you look at Toronto news, I think about the time following the van attack on Yonge Street, or the Danforth mass shooting. There's been many instances where if you were looking at our news, I remember people calling from out of town being like, are you okay? We live in it and we know that actually it's an isolated incident. So I think you have to use your own judgment and maybe, you know, like balance it out with your life stage, you know, who you're bringing with you, and a little bit of common sense.
Common sense for sure, yeah. It is a privilege to travel.
Yes,
Let's just say that. The majority of people, especially in the States, don't even have a passport. So if you're lucky and you're part of that percentage, I think it is a privilege. We have to treat it as such, as you mentioned, B. I think for me, I think because I come from news, I always have a very good dose of paranoia that runs through me. You always think of catastrophic, you know, events happening. So I've always had paranoia where I travel. And I have a list of things that I always do when I travel. Number one, you go to travel.gc.ca and I register with the Canadian government and the embassy and let them know where I'm going to be every single trip.
That's so good.
It's so easy to do. So if something unexpected happens, so for example, last year I was supposed to be going to Sicily and there were wildfires all over Sicily. So if all of a sudden something unexpected happens, you want your government to know you're there so that they can go, we have these people registered here, so they can send help, etc. So that's the number one thing that I do. And I hate to say it, for a lot of people, I think less in Canada, but there are a lot of people who still say things like, I don't follow the politics. Politics is not for me. There's too much division and all of that stuff. That is a very privileged thing to say because P.S., politics touches every single part of your lives, including your travel. And so to stay on top of news is not just because that's what you do. It's also to keep on top of what's happening. Also, we go to places where the healthcare system, it looks to be more intact. When we had Marquesa, the first place we said was, where are we gonna go if something happens with our child? I think a lot of new parents get into the paranoia. What happens if we travel and I have a new child? Or elderly parents, where's a hospital system that I can rely on? Where is there not a lot of police corruption?
Right.
Where do I know that there's justice if something goes sideways? You know, so we have a list of countries, unfortunately, that we also don't feel safe traveling in, especially with our daughter. But this is, again, political, because if you are a government, the more democratic and just and equal your society is, the more tourists like us want to come there. So this is actually a call to all these countries. If you're a dictatorship, we're probably not coming to visit anytime soon. And if you've got trouble, so take care of your people so that we can spend our money with you. You know? Simple.
Yeah.
Simple.